My time to Mr. Fitzgerald from Wisconsin.
I thank Mr. Massey for the time. Sheriff, one of the things I try to focus on in the hearings that we've had on the border is the corridors that exist throughout the United States, because I'm always perplexed, I think, when you hear people talk about, well, it's an issue at the border, but it's not an issue in Wisconsin or South Dakota or North Dakota. But that's not the case, right? The other thing I'd say is, you know, strip clubs, head shops, truck stops, all of these types of locations is kind of where this stuff is transported, right? I mean, we started to see that probably 10 years ago, maybe even longer, and how it's being distributed. So I was wondering if you could comment on that, because the one thing we have with fentanyl is we still have issues, I think, related to it not being a Schedule I drug. And that's something this Congress should do as well, and I wonder if you could comment on that.
I can, and there's been a shift over the last couple of years on smuggling, and I'll answer it. There's two thoughts in this. First of all, since there's less border patrol on the border now, and they're more into processing, they're very thin. So the migrants that are being smuggled, they get them up to the closest asphalt, closest highway, cars pull in, grab them, they're gone. So the old corridors like you're talking about that was very common, they're not as used like they used to. They don't have to, because they don't have to get that deep into our counties. The other aspect of what you're talking about, the trafficking aspect of it, where they're trafficking kids and adults, females and males, the trafficking aspect, the non-consensual part of it is, yes, they're taking them to stash houses, they're making them servant within truck stops, for example, within strip clubs and places like that. Just a little side note on that, one of the, and the question hasn't been asked to me, but one of the things we've done on the many innovative thoughts is we have a program through our nonprofit where we're going after the cartels that are trafficking these people. And we're going after them, not just in my county, but working with sheriffs in Dallas, Texas, Sacramento, California, throughout urban areas where we know they're being taken to and exploited. So we're doing that program. And again, that's a multi-million-dollar program that we're putting forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the comments, and I would yield back to Mr. Massey.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. I yield my time to Mr. Roy from Texas.
I thank the gentleman from Kentucky. Kayla Hamilton, 20 years old, Aberdeen, Maryland. She was recently brutally murdered by an MS-13 gang member who was allowed into the United States as a UAC last year, who was 17 years old. There was a 24-year-old Honduran immigrant was charged with murder in the brutal stabbing death of a Florida man after crossing the U.S. border illegally while posing as a UAC. He was found covered in blood after allegedly killing a father of four who had taken the immigrant in because the immigrant had posed as a UAC. It's not always as simple as some of my colleagues say. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been spending some time today misleading the American people, telling untruths about legislation that I have put forward, H.R. 29, and in so doing, using words like unchristian. The legislation, to be clear to all, is legislation that reiterates existing law. It makes very clear that under existing law, we are supposed to detain when we have somebody who is seeking asylum. It maintains our asylum laws in full and requires that we detain. To be clear for everybody to listen, and I want to follow up Mr. Daniels for your view on this. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are universally saying to the American people and to all they represent, to every single American citizen, they are saying that they believe we should release, against current law, that we should release into the United States using parole, which is supposed to be on a case-by-case basis, release into the United States under parole or with notices to appear without having full detention of someone making an asylum claim. They're making false accusations about a law saying that we should follow the law and detain. And so my question for you, Sheriff, with your knowledge of the law, is if we were going to follow the law, would that not slow down the numbers, funnel in those who can make a legitimate asylum claim so that they could then be detained for an adjudication of that claim so they could still claim asylum, and Americans would be safer and migrants would be safer? Could the sheriff respond to that?
Yes, Congressman, the answer to that is yes. That's our approach. National sheriffs, Western Sheriff, Southwest Border addressed that with Secretary Marcus in a room about enhanced judicial oversight when it comes to how we address them at the border. Right now, there is no consequence. I mean, they know if they come here, they claim those couple words, they're in the country. They'll come back within the year for their first hearing, and then
So that is key. They know that they will get released, and
Yes.
therefore that is the problem at the border. I yield back.
And from Texas, Mr. Gooden is recognized.